Hi there. Welcome back to Moss and Mushroom ASMR. Today, I thought I would do a video specifically to help you sleep. Now, you know I love philosophy, but one of the best sleep aids I've ever found is reading Aristotle right before you go to bed. I like Aristotle. I do. This isn't meant to be a dig at Aristotle. But if you haven't read Aristotle before, I think you'll understand once I start reading. Or maybe you won't. But this video is your Aristotle sleep aid. This is a collection of selected works by Aristotle, and I have it because I don't read a lot of ancient philosophy, so there's not really a need for me to have a bunch of separate books. I have the Nicomachean Ethics separated out, but for the rest of them, excerpts are fine. So what I'm going to read you is a selection from the Physics. And this is the very beginning of Aristotle's physics. Since understanding and knowing in every inquiry concerned with things having principles or causes or elements results from the knowledge of these, for we think that we know each thing when we know the first causes and the first principles and have reached the elements. Clearly, in the science of nature too, we should first try to determine what is the case with regard to the principles. The natural way to proceed is from what is more known and clearer to us, what is by nature clearer and more known. For what is known to us and what is known without qualification are not the same. So we should proceed in this manner, namely from what is less clear by nature, though clearer to us, to what is by its nature clearer and more known. Now, the things that are at first plain and clear to us are rather mingled, and it is later that their elements and principles become known to those who distinguish them. Consequently, in the case of each thing, we should proceed from its entirety to each of its constituents, for it is the whole that is more known by sensation, and a thing in its entirety, since it includes many constituents as parts, is kind of a whole. In a sense, a name is related to its formula in the same way, for a name signifies some whole without distinguishing its parts, as in the case of a circle, but its definition analyzes the whole into its constituents. Children, too, at first call every man Papa and every woman Mama, but later on they distinguish each of them. All thinkers posit contraries as principles, e.g., A, those who say that the universe is one and motionless. Even Parmenides posits the hot and the cold as principles, and calls them fire and earth. And B, those who speak of the rare and the dense. And C, Democritus, who posits the solid and the void, calling them being and non-being, respectively, and who uses as differentiae position, shape, and order as genera of contraries. For example, in the case of position, these are up and down, and also in front and behind. But in the case of shape, they are the angular and the non-angular, and also the straight and the circular. It is clear then that, in a sense, all thinkers posit contraries as principles, and with good reason. For A, neither must one principle be composed of another principle. B, nor should they be composed of other things, but the other things should be composed of them. Now, the primary contraries possess both these attributes. They are not composed of other things, because they are primary, and A, neither of them is composed of the other, because they are contraries. However, we should attend to an argument as well in order to see how this turns out to be the case. First, we must grant that no thing by nature acts on or is acted on by any other chance thing, nor does anything come to be from any other chance thing unless one grants that this takes place in virtue of an attribute. For how could the white come to be from the musical unless the musical were an accident of the non-white or the black? But the white does come to be from the non-white, not from any non-white, but from black or some intermediate color, and the musical comes to be from the non-musical, not from any non-musical, but from the unmusical, or something between the musical and the unmusical, if there is such. Nor, again, does anything, when destroyed, change into any chance thing. For example, the white is destroyed not into the musical, unless it be in virtue of an attribute, but into the non-white, not into any chance non-white, but into black or some other intermediate color, and the musical is similarly destroyed into the non-musical, not into any chance non-musical, but into the unmusical, or some intermediate between the two, if there is such. It is likewise with all other cases, since the same formula applies even to things which are not simple but composite. But we fail to notice this happening because no names have been given to the opposite dispositions. For the harmonious must come to be from the inharmonious, and the inharmonious from the harmonious, and the harmonious must be destroyed into something which is not harmonious, not into any chance thing, but into that which is opposed to the harmonious. It makes no difference whether we speak of harmony, or of order, or of composition, for evidently it is the same formula which applies to them. Again, the generation of a house, and of a statue, and of any other thing, takes place in a similar way. For a house is generated from objects which exist not in composition, but are divided in a certain way, and likewise for a statue or anything that has been shaped from shapelessness. And what results in each of these are order in one case and a composition in the other. If then this is all true, everything that is generated or destroyed is so from or to a contrary or an intermediate. As for the intermediates, they are composed of contraries. The other colors, for example, are composed of black and white. Thus, everything which is generated by nature is a contrary or composed of contraries. Up to this point, most of the other thinkers were quite close in following this line of thinking, as we said before, for they all said that the elements, also called principles by them, are contraries, as if compelled by truth itself, even if they gave no reason. However, they differed from each other thus. Some of them used prior contraries, while others used posterior, and some used contraries more known in formula, while others used contraries more known according to sensation. For some posited as causes of generation the hot and the cold, others the moist and the dry, while others posited the odd and the even, and still others strife and friendship. And these differ from each other in the way stated. So the principles which they used are in one way the same, but in another distinct. They are distinct in the manner in which most thinkers took them to be, but they are the same in so far as they are analogous, for they are taken from the same two sets of contraries, some of them being wider, while others narrower in extent. In this way, then, they spoke of them in the same, and also in a distinct manner, some in a worse, and others in a better way. And, as we said, some posited them as more known according to formula, while others as more known according to sensation. For the universal is known according to formula, but the individual according to sensation, since the formula is of the universal, but sensation is of the part. For example, contrary principles according to formula are the great and the small. Those according to sensation are the dense and the rare. It is evident, then, that the principles should be contraries. Next, we should consider whether the principles are 2 or 3 or more than 3. There cannot be just one principle, since there cannot be just one contrary, nor can the principles be infinite, since otherwise being will not be knowable. Also, in every genus there is just one contrariety, and substance is one genus. Besides, it is possible for things to be generated from a finite number of principles, and it is better if they come to be from a finite number, as Empedocles says, than from an infinite number, for Empedocles thinks that from his finite principles he can give an account of all that Anaxagoras can from his infinite principles. Again, some contraries are prior to others, and some come to be from others, as in the case of the sweet and bitter, and of the white and black, but the principles must always remain. So it is clear from all these arguments that the principles are neither one nor infinite. Since the principles, then, are finite, there is some problem in positing them to be not only two, for one might raise the problem as to how density can by nature act on rarity, or rarity on density, so as to produce something. The problem is similar in the case of any pair of contraries, for it is not strife that friendship brings together and makes something out of, nor does strife make something out of friendship, but both act on a third and distant object. Some thinkers use even more such objects from which they construct the nature of things. In addition to the above, if no nature distinct from the contraries is assumed, one might also raise another difficulty, for among things we observe no contrary as being a substance. Now, a principle should not be a predicate of any subject, since there would then be a principle of a principle. For the subject is a principle and is thought to be prior to what is a predicate of it. Moreover, we maintain that no substance is contrary to a substance. So how can there be a substance which is composed of non-substances? Or how can a non-substance be prior to a substance? In view of all this, if we were to grant as true both the previous statement and this argument, then to preserve both, it would be necessary for us to assume a third principle, like the one held by those who say that the universe is of one nature, i.e., of fire or water, or an intermediate between them. This principle seems to be rather an intermediate, for fire and earth and air and water are already composites with contraries, and on account of this, those who posit as an underlying subject something distinct from these four elements do so not without good reason. Other thinkers choose air from the four elements, for of these, air has sensible differences to the least degree. Then water comes next. Yet all these thinkers regard this one principle, or the one, as taking on a shape by means of contraries, i.e., by density and rarity, and in varying degrees. Now, such contraries, considered universally, are clearly excess and deficiency, as stated previously, and the doctrine that the one and excess and deficiency are principles of things, we may add, seems to be an old one, except that it is not stated in the same manner. For the early thinkers said that the two contraries act, but the one is acted upon, whereas some of the later thinkers stated rather the contrary, namely that the one acts while the two contraries are acted upon. From a consideration of these and other such arguments, then, it would seem that there is some reason in maintaining that the elements are three, as we said before, but there is no reason in maintaining that they are more than three, for one element is sufficient as a subject to be acted upon. If with four elements there are two contrarieties, a distinct intermediate nature will be needed for each contrariety, and if, being two, they can generate from each other, one of the two contrarieties will be superfluous. And along with this, the primary contrarieties cannot be many, for substance is a single genus of being, so the principles can differ in priority and posteriority and not in genus. For in a single genus, there can be only one contrariety, and all other contrarieties in that genus are thought to be referred to one. It is evident then that there can be neither only one nor more than 2 or 3 elements, but as we said before, there is much difficulty as to whether there are 2 or 3. So I'm going to end right there for today, but I hope you found this to be relaxing and sleep-inducing. I might go take a nap myself. Good night.